Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 256, Zuzong. During the hour of Yu, Li Jianting went for a walk in the garden, her only time for leisure for the entire day. With Feng Quan accompanying her at the side, the heir apparent strolled along the stone path, still thinking about the government affairs that was discussed in the hall. A few days later, there's going to be a worshipping ceremony held to pray for rain. Li Jianting raised her fingers to brush aside the flower branch by her cheek. This is a matter of importance. Nothing must go wrong on that day. Feng Quan shifted away the flower branch for Li Jianting and said deferentially, "This humble slave will definitely do his best." Li Jianting stood at the edge of the pond and sprinkled fish food into it. Watching the carps fighting among themselves, she said, "You used to serve imperial concubine Mu in the past, and you were an arrogant and impudent one who did not know to exercise forbearance, which earned you the censure of the imperial court ministers. Now that you had a close encounter with death, you are a lot more restrained." The heir apparent certainly did not bring up this matter in the midst of discussing political affairs on a whim. There was something else in those words. Feng Quan's gaze flickered, and as he bowed, he hazarded a guess as to the heir apparent's intent. In a soft voice, he said, "The servant takes after the disposition of his master. Your Highness treats the others with tolerance and magnanimity, and this humble slave, having received your Highness's guidance, naturally dare not be as presumptuous as I had been before. I'm ashamed to say that I've been impertinent in the past when I met the various excellencies from the Grand Secretariat, and now that I have been graced with the favor of my lord, I ought to take the past as a cautionary tale and draw my lesson from it." Li Jianting glanced at Feng Quan. "You're a fine one." Feng Quan had served Emperor Tianchen before. Li Jianheng was simple-minded and his emotions were all clearly written on his face. But ever since Li Jianting entered the palace, she indistinctly began to exude the regal might of a sovereign that made her hard to predict. She had no preference when she had her meals here. No matter how delicious the food was, she would not put her chopsticks to it over 3 times. Even the delight and fury in her words were hard to differentiate. "I heard just how harsh Fu Man was on you when you were in prison before, and now you're both working together in Mingli Hall," Li Jianting said. "Do you harbor any displeasure?" Feng Quan lifted the hem of his robe and kneeled. "This humble slave is your Highness's slave, and this humble slave is aware that there must be some deeper meaning to your Highness' arrangement. Although this humble slave and Fu Man used to fall foul of one another, he was also doing his job that time, so this humble slave dare not harbor resentment. He nearly broke your leg." Li Jianting looked at the carps that were still fighting for food. Feng Quan kowtowed and choked with sobs. In a thin voice, he said, "The gong wielding the flogging rods are all old hands from the Eastern Depot. They know not to go too far." Li Jianting focused on watching the fishes and said as if nonchalantly, "Although Fu Man is a long-serving eunuch from the former emperor's reign, he only began to move around in the emperor's presence after the Eastern Depot was left idle." She smiled. "I've never heard of the former emperor ordering him to manage the affairs of the Eastern Depot, and I didn't expect him to be that familiar with the old-timers of the Eastern Depot, too. Looks like he's also well acquainted with the random dogs and cats in my palace, too." Feng Quan made use of the action of wiping his tears to wipe his sweat. He instantly understood what the heir apparent meant. Li Jianting was poisoned in the palace. All her people in the palace were selected by Shueziozhuo, and even so, they failed to thwart the Empress Dowager, so the perpetrator must have had the help of someone who was familiar with the ins and outs of her palace. Li Jianting used Fu Man when she hosted a banquet to kill Han Cheng, and now that the thorn in her side called Han Cheng had been eliminated, she ought to settle the score. Feng Quan felt a little more settled when he thought to this point. Since Fu Man is an old hand from the reign of the former emperor, he differs from the others in the inner court and yamen. He has vast experience, and he's in the good books of the various excellencies from the Grand Secretariat, so the number of people he is well acquainted with is naturally more than this humble slave. Although he has plenty of allies and he is cordial to people, attentive to his work, and stays within the confines of propriety. You're leaving your words unfinished. Stay within the confines of propriety? He seemed to me to be a very ambitious one, a Lao Zuzong he is. Li Jianting took the handkerchief to wipe her hands. He is but a mere eunuch who has neither the merit in maintaining state stability nor the courage to remonstrate with his sovereign. Yet he can be a Lao Zuzong just because he has been in the emperor's presence for long. Whose ancestors were they? She looked askance at Feng Quan. Mine. Feng Quan only felt this breezily spoken word to be as heavy as the lofty mountains, crushing down on him such that he dared not raise his head. He hurriedly kowtowed, "Your Highness is the noble descendant of the royal family. The glorious legacy of the great ancestor is all handed into the hands of your Highness. Your Highness is the supreme ruler of the world." The eunuch faction threw court politics into a mess during the reign of Emperor Xiand. They killed off a Lao Zuzong, but never in my imagination would I expect to come across another one. Evidently, human greed has no limits, like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. All the kind treatment in the world can't get you loyalty. Favoring and trusting someone too much is bound to lead to disaster. Li Jianting handed the handkerchief to the palace maid at the side and said, self-mockingly, "However, he does indeed have the capability to really be my ancestor for no rhyme or reason." Fu Man had children and grandchildren all over, and he also had contacts with the imperial court officials with the opportunity of working in Mingli Hall accorded him. However, he was cleverer than Pan Rugui here. He did not dare to mess with the etiquettes when he came face to face with the Grand Secretariat officials. In fact, he would not even rule out kowtowing to them once every 10 steps if he could. Kong Qiu was previously in ill health, and he had pushed himself through his illness to go about his official duties. Fu Man, who was waiting in attendance in Mingli Hall, personally tested Kong Qiu's medicine and meticulously took care of the Grand Secretary, all to build up a good reputation for Li Jianting. Fu Man went to such an extent to win imperial favor, but he also just so happened to commit a big taboo. He took it upon himself to curry favor with the imperial censors, but he was a eunuch of the inner palace, so what was he trying to win over the outer court officials? He wanted to be both a Lao Zuzong in the palace and a decent eunuch outside of it. Now that he had garnered himself quite the prestige inside and outside, it instead held him back from his official duties. Eunuchs were the slaves of the Son of Heaven, and serving the Son of Heaven was their duty. If Pan Rugui had not set the precedent of undermining court politics, the rights to endorse memorials would not have been reduced to a common-use iron plague for the eunuchs to line their own pockets. But Fu Man was respectful and modest to those on the outside while accumulating power on the inside. If Li Jianting wanted to take down Fu Man, she needed a reason that could convince the others. At this time, the sky was inching toward darkness. A line of people bearing lanterns walked from the other end of the garden. Fu Man had been doing a good job in his work recently, so his complexion was naturally rosy. From afar, he saw Li Jianting standing by the pond, and the junior eunuch following by his side whispered into his ear, "Zuzong, Feng Quan is kneeling." Fu Man flicked his horsetail whisk. He has rendered meritorious service earlier during the banquet. If he has been willing to know and keep his place, Her Highness will naturally not make things difficult for him. But that temper of his really leaves much to be desired. It comes as no surprise if he angered Her Highness over some trivial matters. With that, he harumphed slightly, but he was all smiles as he walked over to greet them and bowed to Li Jianting. "You're here." Li Jianting smiled. "Is there a matter of importance?" "This humble slave thinks of your Highness all the time." Fu Man passed by Feng Quan. Knowing that Li Jianting did not like to be touched, he escorted her down the steps without actually holding on to her. "So I grew anxious when I didn't hear any news while waiting in the hall." This humble slave saw the clouds gathering on the horizon, and fearing it would rain later, and thus hurried over to bring an umbrella to your Highness. "You're indeed a thoughtful one," Li Jianting said. Thorough as ever in every matter. As if he had only just seen Feng Quan, Fu Man exclaimed in surprise. Oh, my, what happened here? The sky was silent and still. Amidst the flickering shadows of the light, Li Jianting suddenly hit on an idea. Her expression gradually grew frostier. Arrogant and conceited thing. I heard he was disrespectful to the various excellencies while on duty in the hall, so I had him kneel here as a punishment. Upon hearing this, Feng Quan sobbed and prostrated himself over the ground, looking precisely like someone who had just been reproved. He said, "This humble slave was not discerning enough and offended the excellencies. I really deserve death for my sins, Your Highness. I know you served as the brush-holding director during the reign of the former emperor, but how can eunuchs be on the same level with the officials of the previous court? Those local officials who entered the palace to submit their reports are all tiring themselves out working hard for the sake of the local civil administration. Who do you think you are to be showing them such attitude? The local officials." Understanding dawned on Fu Man. No wonder Li Jianting was angry. The drought in the Yang city had been giving the heir apparent sleepless nights these days. Expenditures inside and outside the palace were all being cut back. Even the heir apparent herself was eating round-grained rice every meal, saying that it was not to forget the hardship of the common folks. She also thought highly of the local officials. Your Highness works hard on government affairs in the hall. Coming out to take a stroll in the garden is a rare moment to relax and de-stress. You mustn't let this put a damper on your mood. Fu Man guided Li Jianting away and said with an apologetic smile, His Excellency Shui has also just arrived and is waiting in the hall for Your Highness. Fu Man cast several glances at Feng Quan and said nothing to intercede on his behalf. Li Jianting did not look at Feng Quan again and made a beeline back. He served the tea after Li Jianting returned to Mingli Hall and withdrew, and as he waited under the eaves, he asked the junior eunuch in a hushed tone, "Still kneeling?" The junior eunuch snickered. "Still kneeling? Tell him to get up." "Zuzong," the junior eunuch asked out of curiosity. "Doesn't he always act all high and mighty? And he's so smart-mouthed, too. Why is Zuzong helping him? Just let him kneel until Her Highness is done discussing government affairs. As slaves, we have to be of the same mind as our sovereign and relieve our sovereign's worries," Fu Man said. "He has forged a bond with Her Highness from serving her while she is still the heir apparent. Her Highness only told him to kneel. Without really punishing him, which means she's treating him with leniency. Her Highness forgot about it at this point in time, but when she remembers it later, and he ends up crying again, then her heart will soften towards him on account of their old ties. I didn't plead for mercy for him earlier. If I let him kneel any longer, Her Highness is going to reproach us slaves for not knowing any better. Zuzong really does think it through," the junior eunuch said in admiration. "You're always reading the master's mind. Truly brilliant. I'll go now and get him to stand up." Fu Man looked back at the dim yellowish candlelight emanating from within Mingli Hall and subconsciously smiled. Without that old son of a bitch, Han Cheng, there was no longer anyone out there who have something that could be used against him. He only had to serve the heir apparent well, then obtain the Grand Secretariat's recommendation, and he would enjoy a meteoric rise. Whatever Pan Rugui could do, so could he, except that he wanted to do an even better and an even more beautiful job of it. Fu Man turned his gaze. The only thing was that the Empress Dowager was still around, and that made him unable to rest easy. To eliminate future trouble, he would have to make his move as soon as possible. End chapter. Note: hour of you is 5 to 7 p.m. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 257, Tea Talk. Shenzhequan lay in bed, finding it difficult to get up. Xiao Qiye had not left and was still in Duan province. After the 20th of the month, the Bianchi cavalry's attacks in the north abated, and Lu Guangbai personally made a trip to Duan province. The battle in Duan province was perilous. Seems like it will take time to repair the city wall. Lu Guangbai dismounted the horse. Jiming has dispatched military craftsmen over. Dressed in his regular robes, Xiao Qiye said, "Eldest brother is indeed thorough in his thinking." He paused and looked at the horse carriage at the back with a surprised expression. "Eldest sister-in-law is here." The maidservant lifted the carriage screen and Lu Yizi poked her head out as she clutched her handkerchief in hand. With a smile on his face, Lu Guangbai announced, "Sun Er is here too. I been missing Lanzhou back at home." Lu Yizi got off the carriage with the help of her maidservant and said to Xiao Qiye, who had gone over to receive her, "And so I came over for a look." Xiao Qiye turned aside and said, "Lanzhou misses eldest sister-in-law, too." Looking at the city walls of Duan province, Lu Yizi continued, "Now that Zongbo's victory is already cast in stone, Lanzhou ought to nurse his injuries." She turned her head to the side and pursed her lips into a smile. "I specially brought Sun Er along to relieve Lanzhou's boredom." Xiao Sun followed behind his mother without needing anyone to lead him by the hand. He bowed to Xiao Qiye, "Second uncle." Xiao Qiye picked up Xiao Sun and hoisted him up mid-air for a closer look. "The little lad has grown taller. He's just like you when you were a child." Lu Guangbai handed the horsewhip over to Chen Yang. "He worries all day long that he can't grow taller, and he drinks his milk on time. I asked him what wish he made during the spring festival, and he said he wants to grow as tall as his second uncle." As he said so, he pinched Xiao Sun's expressionless cheek. "The nephew is just like his uncle. Well, you can stop thinking about it and just take after me. Uncle is good, too." Xiao Sun held on to Xiao Qiye's arm for support and said in a childlike voice, magnanimous of heart and not given to embellishment, "Uncle is a general who is an equally accomplished man of letters." The trio laughed and Lu Guangbai sighed. "Although you're talking about your uncle, it sounds more like you're complimenting your father." There were now many children in the residence. Ding Tao and Li Xiong still had Ji Ran with them. Xiao Qiye carried Xiao Sun back but he struggled, saying he wanted to see Shen Zequan. Xiao Sun liked Shen Zequan, so much that he only wanted Shen Zequan to hold his hand and lead him during the spring festival. Shen Zequan's calves were injured, so he received them before the steps. After entering the house, the few of them exchanged some pleasantries, and Lu Yizi later asked to bring Xiao Sun along to visit and pay their respects to Ji Gang. After Lu Yizi left, Shen Zequan said, "The war in the north has eased up a little. In coming here, General Lu has something to discuss with me on eldest brother's behalf." Lu Guangbai picked up his teacup and smiled as he lifted the lid. He cast a glance at Xiao Qiye, then at Shen Zequan. "Your lordship is a heroic man who never forgets about military affairs for even a moment." "That's right. Jiming indeed has a message for me to bring to you. Now that Hassan is dead, the crisis in Duan province has been averted, and the Qiang tribe in the south has been defeated. It's just the perfect time to resume the war. With Hassan dead, the status of the great hero Amuir remains to be seen," Xiao Qiye said. "Eldest brother wants to seize the opportunity to launch a counter-attack and seal our victory with this one move. Brothers of the same mind." Lu Guangbai sipped his tea. "You were thinking that way, too." Xiao Qiye's position was close to the window. As he turned his thumb ring, his slightly tilted nape exposed the jut in his throat under the dim light. Amuir could maintain the stability of the various tribes because the Han-Shi tribe's cavalry is brave and capable warriors, but last year, the Han-Shi tribe's elites were all sent into the battlefields, where the fighting went on for a year. The Han-Shi tribe has long run out of ammunition and food, and they are not as much of an intimidating deterrent to the other tribes as they were before. With Hassan's death, Amuir lost his right arm. If we don't strike now, then when? If you want to enter the desert from the east, you will need the cooperation of the three armies, Lu Guangbai said. Commander-in-Chief Qi is still subjected to Chu capital's deployment orders, so this is no easy feat to carry out. Xiao Jiming and Lu Guangbai both had a personal relationship with Qi Ziyin, but this matter had to be directly discussed with Shenzhen in Duan province, and that was something a personal relationship could not resolve. Qi Ziyin's successive deployments of troops were all to assist Libai, but more than half of the Bianchi cavalry had already retreated, and the Qiang tribe in the south had been driven back into the desert. She had no reason to make another trip here with Libai. The Ministry of War agreed to let Commander-in-Chief Qi deploy troops to Gidal because Chen Zhen and the other important, long-time serving ministers of the state are keenly aware that Libai's crisis has a bearing on Chu capital. Now that Gidal has been fought and beaten, Lu Guangbai set down his teacup. It's a different story altogether. Qi Ziyin did not agree to hand over the Qingsha tribe's territory to Haraguo, and she also had the intent to call a temporary halt to the war. It had not been easy for her to borrow grains, and all the grains from Shenzhen had to be returned. If it was left to fester over time, it would sooner or later leave a bad taste in her mouth. Qidong was fatigued from the war this year, and half of the fields that their military troops worked on had been neglected. They had to depend on the imperial court and Shenzhen for even the grains needed to survive through the winter, let alone talk about the military grains. It would not have been such a big deal if Qidong was like He province, but Qidong still had the garrison troops, and Qi Ziyin held military power in her hands. She could not afford to be so slipshod here. Commander-in-Chief Qi is the Li clan's commander-in-chief. If she hangs around the rebels, she will be suspected of conspiring against the state. Shenzhen caressed the frame of his fan. When Qidong dispatched troops against the Qingsha tribe, there were already impeachment memorials being submitted in the court. If Commander-in-Chief Qi attacks the desert together with Libai again, Chu capital will be able to dismiss her from her post as the Commander-in-Chief. Qi Ziyin's refusal to return Lu Pinjian back then had already earned her censures from the imperial court. She was not well liked by the imperial censors to begin with. Qi Xiu married Hua Xianji to preserve Qidong's military power. The Empress Dowager might have fallen from power again, but this layer of connection still remained. Qi Ziyin killed Han Cheng for Li Jianting when she was in Chu capital, and this matter could be both interpreted as loyalty and treachery. Shenzhen's eyes were mild and gentle in his sickness, as if all his sharp edges had been completely eradicated. The heir apparent is about to ascend to the throne, and going by Shui Ziaozuo's intent, she has to confer a reward upon Commander-in-Chief Qi. He drank his tea, looking as if he was conversing about an anecdote from the countryside. Then we shall wait and see. If the heir apparent really does not begrudge it, she'll be doing us a great favor. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 258, Small Fish. The heir apparent led all the officials to pray for rain, but rain never did fall upon Yang City. Zhang Qingshan traversed all over trying to raise grains, while Liang Qiushan was still auditing the accounts of Chuan City. The Marquis of Helian meanwhile, was so scared witless that he fell seriously ill after Han Cheng's death and did not dare to step out of his residence in the past few days. We can't give them the runaround on this account, the Marquis of Helian sighed with distress as he lay on the bed, and Her Majesty is being confined in the Forbidden Palace. Heaven wants my Fei clan to perish. Young Master Fei had also gotten quite the fright from Li Jianting during the banquet that day, so he did not dare to wander all over town either. Keeping watch by his father's side, he reproached, "Why did you have to be that greedy? It's such a large sum of money. We can't even make up for the deficit even if we want to. How can you blame me? Who am I doing it for?" The Marquis of Helian was in tears. With some difficulty, he propped himself up and pointed at Fei Shi. "Had you not fallen so short on expectations, would I need to plead with the others to such an extent? Look at yourself. You're neither accomplished in literary pursuits nor martial arts. Even if you inherit the Marquis title, you'd be just idling around waiting for death. If I don't pull strings, what's going to happen to our Fei clan in the future?" Yes, you're right. Fei Shi heard his father gasping urgently for breath and helped him to lie down again. I'm a rascal, and I'm stupid. Don't you go making yourself faint from anger. The Marquis of Helion clutched his chest to compose himself as he lay with his tears streaming. If our properties were to be confiscated, I don't even dare to think about it. Wearing a white flower behind one of her ears, Commandery Princess Zayu was holding her child in her arms. She had been staying at home after her divorce, having grown a lot more haggard after hearing of the demise of the Pan clan. She handed the baby over to the wet nurse and motioned for the attendants to leave. Had you known it would come to this, would you have acted so? It's too late for regrets now. Commandery Princess Zayu's almond-shaped eyes were slightly reddened. This account has caused the death of so many people. That's right. This account has indeed caused deaths, the Marquis of Helion lamented mournfully, but without this account, how could you have been able to marry into the Pan clan? This prestige and honor of yours were all given to you by this account. When the Hua clan was at the height of their power, Hua Saiqian held sway over the court and the common folks. We were under their thumbs and had no choice but to board their boat and throw in our lot with them. After Hua Saiqian's death, I was hoping that Shi heir would be able to get an official post and at the very least, have a say in the imperial court, but he was always fooling around all day long. I was left without a choice. The Fei clan of Chuan City had very few male offspring. There was only Fei Shi of lawful birth in the legitimate line of descent. If the Marquis of Helion did not plan ahead, they would become the second Shui clan. However, even though the Shui clan was on the decline, they had still produced a Shui Zaiuzuo. On the contrary, the Fei clan genuinely had no one else in the family. When Marquis of Helion thought to this point, he got up again and asked, "What's the name of that child who used to serve in the Jinyi Wei?" "You mean, Fei Sheng?" Fei Shi offered. Right. Fei Sheng, the Marquis of Helion said. It was all because I vouched for him that he could inherit his father's position, and it was also on my account that Han Cheng promoted him. He later fled with Xiao Qiye and now, he's serving Shenzhequan in Zongbo. The color drained from Fei Shi's expression. Those are rebels. Associating with him is punishable by death. There's no way we can make up for such a large deficit. The Marquis of Helion raised his voice. Not only will our properties be confiscated but we would also be stripped of our noble title. Who knows? Perhaps we will even be beheaded. Look at the Pan clan. How many of their members are still alive? Even if they were sent into exile, they would still die midway through the journey. The more he spoke, the more his heart grew cold. We might as well switch allegiance to Zongbo. Even Tao Ming of Huai province has fled. Fei Shi sat, stunned. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and what's more, he was an heir apparent to a marquis title. All along, their line had been in officials of Great Zhou and yet, he was now suddenly being asked to throw in their lot with the traitors and rebels. He could not help but find it absurd and ludicrous. After sitting in a daze for a while, he said, "No, that won't do. How can I be a disloyal turncoat? Chenzi did not betray the state even right until the time he died. He and I are bosom friends. I can't do such a disloyal and unrighteous thing. Besides, Shenzhequan is a vicious and ruthless person who is hard to get along with, while Fei Sheng hankers after fame and power. No, this won't do. Who cares about loyalty and righteousness when disaster is at hand?" The Marquis of Helion was exasperated with his son for failing to live up to expectations. You wouldn't learn what you ought to learn, but you just have to learn all that reeks of Pan Lin. In any case, I'm not leaving. Fei Shi started to get very obstinate. For what it's worth, you are a marquis. I don't believe that the Grand Secretariat will really lay their hands on you. Why won't they dare? Commandery Princess Zayu wiped her tears. Without the Empress Dowager, the heir apparent will investigate and deal with the matter according to the law. Once the memorandum from the Grand Secretariat is issued, It'd be just a matter of one night for the properties to be confiscated and for the clan to be executed. She thought of Pan Yi and covered her face to weep. That was what happened to the Pan clan. Look at your elder sister. She still has a child. As the Marquis of Helion spoke, he shed a torrent of tears, too. Can you bear to see your old father executed, your dear elder sister sent into exile, and the whole family ending up as tombs in mass burial graves? But it won't do for us to leave either. Commandery Princess Zayu lifted her head and wiped her tears clean. She is right. When Fei Shen was in the Jinyi Way, he was already a master at currying favors with those in authority for personal gains. He hankers after fame and power. There's no way to move him if there is no benefit in it for him. Father, please hear what I have to say. Yang City is now hit with a drought, and Zhangqingshan is in Chu capital raising stocks of grains. But Tao Ming has fled, and the imperial court is in a quandary. Why don't you sell off our manors and use the sum of money to raise grains for the imperial court? But there are no grains everywhere right now, the Marquis of Helion said. I won't be able to raise grains even if I have the money. Buy back the grains from whoever you sold it. Ask them to sell it back to you. Commandery Princess Zayu tucked away her handkerchief. As for Fei Shen, we'll talk about him again when the need really arises in the future. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Mingli Hall replaced its ice basin several days later. Li Jianting was reading the memorials, while Fu Man bowed at the waist, stood in attendance at the side with a fan in hand, gently fanning the heir apparent. Your Highness has been working for 2 hours, Fu Man said softly. Please take a break. Li Jianting closed the memorial. Before she could speak, Fu Man turned his head to shout outside, bring in the chilled sour plum soup, Your Highness, the weather is hot. Please drink some sour plum soup to dispel the heat. Fu Man was in Li Jianting's good graces lately, as she still seemed to be angry with Feng Quan, keeping only Fu Man by her side to serve her. Fu Man was very pleased with this. In the past, he would most certainly not have dared to make the decision for the heir apparent, but after several attempts at feeling the heir apparent out, he noticed she did not reproach him, and so he grew increasingly bold. When Li Jianting wiped her hands, Fu Man tidied up the tabletop for the heir apparent. Li Jianting saw him arranging the memorials one at a time, sorting them in successive order by regions and ministries. Thus, she asked, why is this memorial by Ming Zhang placed together with the Grand Secretary? From what I remember, they are not from the same hometown. Your Highness may be unaware, but they are teacher and pupil. Fu Man was all smiles. The Grand Secretary was the one who selected His Excellency Ming for promotion. Kong Qiu held the post of the Grand Secretary of the Grand Secretariat. The number of officials from the various ministries he evaluated during the appraisals was too numerous to cite individually. As per customary, these officials could all address him as teacher. It had not been long since Li Jianting took over government affairs, so she indeed did not know. There was such a number of officials from the various ministries in the capital. Unless she paid particular attention to them, it would be difficult for her to remember it all. At present, Fu Man was merely serving in the presence of the future emperor. When the time came for the heir apparent to ascend to the throne, he could very possibly become the brush-holding director, who could hold on to the brush dipped in vermilion ink and comment on or endorse memorials on behalf of the emperor. But Li Jianting was not Emperor Xiand. She personally managed government affairs and she was young, so she did not use eunuchs to handle such important and essential governmental affairs on her behalf at all. In memorizing these relationships by heart, Fu Man's ambition was evident. It dawned on Li Jianting, who said in understanding, "You know better than I do." Fu Man was slightly taken aback on hearing that. Reacting quickly, he said, "This humble slave doesn't handle affairs in the imperial court." This matter was actually mentioned once by the Grand Secretary back in the office compound the last time. This humble slave remembered it while serving at the side. It's a good thing. Li Jianting's expression was mild as she said with a smile, I just can't remember, so I'll still need you to remind me in the future. Fu Man stole a glance at Li Jianting as he picked up the bowl. It was only when he saw that the heir apparent looked normal and no different from how she usually was that he felt relieved. It's this humble slave's great fortune to share your highness's worries. Have the various gentlemen arrived? Li Jianting asked. If so, let them in. Kong Qiu, Shueziaozuo and the rest who had just arrived outside Mingli Hall entered on hearing the summon. They kowtowed in unison and greeted, these humble subjects pay their respects to your highness. All of you are my teachers. Li Jianting gestured to Fu Man to help Kong Qiu up. There's no need for the Grand Secretary to be so overly ceremonious on entering the hall. It is I who ought to pay my respects to the Grand Secretary as a student. Kong Qiu took his seat and said with a smile, Your Highness is now different from the past. There is no need to abide by the formalities between teacher and pupil. Mingli Hall is a place where affairs of the state are handled. There's only the ruler and his ministers here. This humble subject dare not overstep my authority. Li Jianting could hardly suppress a smile as she scrutinized Kong Qiu. There's good news today. Kong Qiu was reticent, experienced, and prudent, so he rarely beamed with such visible joy like this. Sure enough, the next moment, she heard Kong Qiu say, Zhang Qingshan reported this morning that the relief grains for Yang City are already all prepared. That's fast. Li Jianting was delighted. Did he borrow grains from He province? It was the Marquis of Helion. Kong Qiu curbed his delight a little. The Marquis of Helion knew that there were discrepancies with the field taxes. In the hope that your highness will be lenient on him, he sold his country estates and raised the grain stock of his own accord to help the common folks of Yang City out of their difficulties. The case of the Chuan City field tax was one everyone tacitly understood. The imperial court wanted to recover the arrears, and even resurvey the fertile lands to return to the commoners. No doubt the Marquis of Helion would have to bear responsibility for it and accept his punishment. But by doing what he just did, the Grand Secretariat would now have to use their discretion to make a judgment in light of his contribution. As the saying goes, there is no room for kindness and tolerance in the law. Your Highness must not take any chances with villains because of this. In this humble subject's opinion, Shueziaozuo kneeled, the Marquis of Helion still has to be investigated and punished according to the law, even if he has prepared grains for Yang City. When all is said and done, our investigation of the field taxes is to restore the people's livelihoods in the 8 cities. Since the Marquis of Helion is willing to raise grains for Yang City, it means he is repentant, Sen Yu said. Your Highness wants to govern the world with benevolence and filial piety, so if you abide strictly by the law and punish the Fei clan by confiscating their properties and executing them, I fear you will lose the heart of the people. Sen Yu was a long-time serving minister and a veteran minister who hailed from a humble origin. Yet he was now trying to preserve the life of the Marquis of Helion, and it was all precisely for Li Jianting. The Marquis of Helion raised grains to provide disaster relief. No matter what, he had made a reputation for being benevolent in Yang City. If Li Jianting were to insist on confiscating and executing their whole clan, then to the remaining noble clans who were still adopting a wait-and-see attitude would be left with only the choice to fight to the bitter end. A long time back, while they were investigating the accounts of Dan City, Sen Yu had already repeatedly advised Kong Qiu to slow down. The prefecture of Duan province had now achieved a resounding victory, and the 6 prefectures of Zongbo were now all under Shen Zequan's complete command. Once Libei has the war under control, the next target would be the Chu capital. As the saying goes, perseverance yields success, much like how the constant dripping water could wear down a stone. Since the noble clans were a long-standing and deeply rooted malady, they could not rush it or they would harm their very core, the heart. How would they have the spare energy and strength to deal with Zongbo then? Besides, with the resurveying of commoners' fields in Dan City, they still had to recheck the census register. If the imperial court wanted to focus on treating their malady, then they had to do so on the premise that there was no external threat. During the reign of Xiand, the imperial court gave them some latitude, but the 8 cities went from bad to worse, eventually bringing about the incident of reselling public grains. Xue Zhuo said. If we don't punish one as a warning to the others, how can we inspire terror in them? The state is now in imminent peril. Sen Yu kneeled, too. Libei and Zongbo revolted one after another, and the rebels are assembled in the countryside. Shenzequan. It's precisely because the state is in imminent peril that we have to strictly enforce court discipline. If we can't root out the noble clans as soon as possible, Xue Zhuo kowtowed heavily, then how can we strive to bring peace to the lands? Sen Yu raised his head and exhorted earnestly, the potent medicine has already been administered. The Pan, Han, Hua, and Wei clans have already collapsed, and the vice grip of the noble clans is not as it used to be. If we do not eliminate external threats at this moment, it will be a great catastrophe in the making. Your Highness, governing a great state is like cooking a small fish. Li Jianting pondered it over without saying a word. Waves of heat outside the hall billowed. It was so quiet that it was terrifying. After a long time, a junior eunuch with a look of urgency swiftly made his way before the hall and whispered something into Feng Quan's ear. Your Highness. The beaded curtain swung wildly. Feng Quan announced, Her Majesty is critically ill. Everyone in the hall turned pale. End chapter.